Greetings, everyone. This is Shaman. You know me as Karen with Naturally with Karen. And I'm stopping by with a live stream today about how I use psilocybe and MDMA. Some people know that as Molly or ecstasy. And as a shaman, born and raised in a family that was very open to that, I began using those things, these substances, entheogens and otherwise, mostly in the late 1980s and early 90s. Why did I do that? I mean, and do I continue to use them? I don't use them recreationally. Do I ask my clients to take them? No, I don't. If I was living in an area where I could legally facilitate shaman settings where we would use them on a therapeutic basis, I would use psilocybe. I don't know that I would use MDMA. I don't know that I'd feel comfortable with that, but I would definitely use psilocybe. So I put a little homemade chai that I made here and a little tiny bit of honey in a jar, and I'm going to take a drink. I'm almost 60. You might notice that I cut off my dreadlocks. A lot of people like to call them locks, but I really got invested with Rastafari in the late 1970s. I learned from a lot of elders who were in their 70s, 60s and 70s back in the 1970s. I'm from the Bay Area, California. And Rastafari got very, very much planted into my heart. I was very much attracted to it because it's such a natural way of life. It supported all life and all people. And I don't think in terms of race and a lot of what we call the schisms, like genderism and abilityism and classism and racism, right? So race is a construct that has been created as a container. And the system that we live under, the Matrix, Babylon, the Beast, whatever you want to call it, is really fond of having containers. So the last time for me, I used psilocybe probably about 15 or 20 times. And if you don't know what that is, it feels kind of weird to you, or you just don't have any experience, don't worry. What psilocybe is just the technical term for what you hear a lot of people say is magic mushrooms. And they grow wild, and some people grow them on different kinds of substrates. But they produce an effect. And the reason that they produce an effect, and the reason I would be really comfortable facilitating ceremonial and therapeutic spiral-based circles with people, especially in the types of places that are designed that are very bio-Vedic, you know, like Alasha's work and many other people. I began learning about earth ships in 1987 with DJ Serralo, who's a philosophy professor at West Valley College, where I went to school, put myself through college. I left with $20 in a suitcase. So my parents had come to Minnesota and left California. It was becoming the rat race to a lot of the elders, my own elders. And I went back to California, to the Bay Area, after 3 months in Minnesota. And so I was out on my own. And I went to enroll in 1991-92 in a basic African hand drumming class with Arthur Hull. And it was done at UC Santa Cruz up on this beautiful hilltop with Robert Kane and Patrick Salisbury and a big group of us. And we learned to do hand drumming on the ashiko, which I still have, that Arthur Hull's group made. One thing led to another as I got really interested in drumming, and I realized how out of rhythm my life really was. How I really didn't have the concept of rhythm. I had so many developments in terms of intuitive intelligences, and my medicine was developing. I was healing myself. I was in college. I was really gravitating to physiological psych and philosophy and sociology and the human condition. I began working in family law and going to this African drumming class with Arthur Hull, and never having ever played an African drum. It started really opening up a lot about real time and not the concept of time. So through the use, responsibly, not recklessly, not I just want to get high, but to develop myself, to open myself, to take these intuitive intelligences that my grandmother had birthed, resurrected, had brought about, including my cards. And I want to thank Suzette Belladonna Henry for this bag from Malawi. It has my cards. I have many different decks, but my cards are in there. My grandmother taught me how to very, very quickly do billet readings, to expand my mind, to hear the ancestors. By 1966, I was being taught by my grandmother. So this is another layer, right? In terms of rhythm, in terms of energy, in terms of holding a space as a shaman and bringing shaman and original medicine woman work. The woman is the healer. Bringing the old ways, being in touch with the ancient of ways, being in touch with fungi, with these magic mushrooms, with psilocybe. And the last experience I had was with Terrence McKenna himself at a rave in 1993 in downtown San Francisco. I had an incredible experience that I know probably half of you are going to watch this and now see an older white woman, who just cut off all of her dreadlocks and is rebuilding. I had a family member who was heroin and fentanyl addicted, and I went through an absolute hell ride for 2 years, but a year of it was absolute sheer hell. Sleeping an hour to 2 hours a night, being at the hospital with overdoses, being scared out of my wits, stressed, despairing, absolutely despairing, and still keeping the medicine and keeping the heartbeat going and keeping this rhythm that I have learned. So after African drumming with Arthur Hall, I started to find these other workshops that were being made known to us. I started to learn African drumming with Babatunde Olatunji, who is the great. He's the original African man that brought the African drum to America. This is an entirely different geometric shape, or I have lots of other words for it. We're thankful. Babatunde Olatunji was going blind. Baba taught us drumming, and I would sit in these workshops Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and really start to pick up the vibes on a very, very interesting level. To be able to communicate with another human as the shaman does, as the animals do. As I'm a wolf spirit, I'm a water element, so I'm very fluid. I'm very much connected with wolf. Baba, you could feel the communication without the labor, like they talk about the woman giving the labor in birth, right? We talk about the babies of the animal kingdom as litters. Word sound is one of the first thing that Rastafari elders started teaching me in the 70s, was about my word sound, right? About my crown of resistance, about livity and not dedication, about why it was so vital and crucial to be in touch with the earth. And for me, it was a process of driving out the stiff, rigid rhythm dork that encompasses so much of Western dominant society, where everyone's chin is over the next person's neck, where trap beats have replaced the heartbeat. Does this make sense? Okay. So using psilocybe, and a lot of people didn't want to just chew them raw. I enjoy chewing them raw. I haven't had them for many, many, many years because I became a solo mama after many years being backstage with a somewhat prominent reggae musician, my son's father, planning a child together with him. My son's uncle is drummer for Jimmy Cliff, and my son's father did lead guitar and backed a lot of the big bands. So I've seen a lot. In 1993, I went to Terrence McKenna's rave, and I used psilocybe, and I was there while he was just going on the mic and going into fractal-based realities and As we left, my friend Bob had parked far away somewhere that would be free. And even though, here we were still slightly, on shrooms and walking out to the car, and 3 men indicated they were going to slice us up. I could see the blade starting to shine under the street light. We could see the car up ahead, but we had to pass through the 3 men whose aura all around them was showing me, communicating with me everything I needed to know. And we heard them. Robert G. Kane will tell you this story himself. He's a scientist. And he says to me even less than a year ago when we talked, I'm a scientist and I don't believe in that stuff, but I saw it. So I can't negate it. He said, you pushed me behind you. Bob is quite a bit older than I am, or several years older than me. Pushed me behind you, and you said, just keep going. And you said it with a voice that didn't sound like you. And we went through those 3 men, and he goes, it was like a shield just went over the top of us, an energetic shield. And as we walked through, he said, those men, he goes, you told me just keep going and keep going to the car. He said, those men, they had a look of horror on their face. Okay. I want to share with you something that I've rarely shared before. We have missed some of these connections. We have put our children through institutions. We've allowed them to be injected. We've allowed the American Medical Association to dictate the drug it, kill it, and cut it model that I started speaking about in the early 80s. Through talking with elders, speaking, listening, through guidance, not government, through learning rhythm again, not the trap beats and the performers and the misogynistic rap and all these things. Your heart needs to align with, as Bob Marley and many, many, many know, the heartbeat, Nyabingi. I learned Nyabingi. I learned earth-based healing. I learned as a young girl from my ancestors, communication and connection with the ancestors, okay? The ancestors, not my ancestors, the ancestors. So what a lot of people think of as reincarnation is actually connecting to the field. It's connecting to the field and sensing. So of course it's natural when you're very young to animal communicate. To be an empath is just our nature. There isn't anyone who is an empath, who is a this or is a that. The closest thing that we realize, and that's Faya snoring again, he's napping. We are healers. We heal with this. This palm of mine is so experienced now from hundreds of hours every year just since coming to Minnesota, and long before that in the Bay Area in California, 42 years native Californian. In and out of a room and people telling me what they saw, how they traveled, symbols and images. And even yesterday, a 15-year client every 2 weeks, and I told her heart, spleen, and liver. She showed me from her field a textbook image of those, which I don't really ever see. I usually can see inside and scan remotely. Psilocybe is different than MDMA. I used to go to Sasha, Dr. Shulgin's home on Monday nights. It was a meeting, a group of people, anesthesiologists and doctors, and I decided to do it one time. What this did is it took some very deep trauma that I had as a little girl, and of course no one can have accurate, exact memories of what happened, but I have some and I've processed them. All of us have some. We may not even know they're there until you have your own child and your own child reaches that age and it opens. And you might have little flashbacks. You might have little snippets while you're in the shower, especially because of the water pouring down on your glands. Sadly, most of us are receiving halogen-rich water with chlorine and fluoride and bromine and bromide in it, which shuts down our thyroid, shuts down the gears of the body, okay? What MDMA, Molly, ecstasy did for me was it was like a defrag. It was like a purge. It was like I was able to sit there with two men that loved me dearly, that were non-sexual, stroking my arm and allowing me to purge and defrag all of these pieces that had somehow needed to find a way to it's so difficult to put into words. They weren't ordered correctly, in a way that it optimized me. And I could literally feel shifting and moving. And it changed me and brought me into deeper empathy instead of my overt protection. Stay away from me. Don't hurt me. Don't break my trust. Don't harm me. It's not that you lose those things forever. It's just that they soften so much that, yes, as Sasha talked about, this was a therapy tool. It's one therapy tool that you can use. Psilocybe, or mushrooms, is something that, given the extensive work from the early 1960s forward with my grandmother for many years of billet reading and learning auras and learning to hear the ancestors and trust myself, and now 16 years here where I'm not working a job for 16 years, a regular job, and I'm working with humans and dogs and some very few dogs, but mostly humans, going into a professional space that I rent and working with energy and working with the body work and working with the readings, medical intuitive, and all of these things are things that I want you to have. I'm not going to say you have to do psilocybe. You have to do. I'm sharing with you to be very crystal clear. These are things I did on my journey. I didn't plan to do them. They showed up as I was going through African drumming. And then as I got so tuned in to African hand drumming, I now have a couple of djembes. I have my ashika from my very beginning. It is signed by Baba Olatunji to Sister Karen. I went into two different to find African dance, the West African, which was really not my cup of tea, although I tried it. I went into Congolese, which really is my cup of tea. It's very lower body centered, lots of hips and backside and lots of different types of beats. And I started going 3 times a week for probably about 3 years. I mean, that was just my live and breathe. And get to the steam room at 24-hour fitness after and clean myself out and smile and be glowing. What psilocybe and MDMA did for me is it rebirthed me in a different way. It took a shaman who came in from birth and worked with grandmother, and it opened and helped with a lot of the absorption of the programs and the institutions. And it gave me an ability to be able to expand what people call consciousness, even my subconscious, my unconscious mind, my cortex and its activity and its electricity. It took away a lot of the bandedness. Because of my seeking and finding natural ways and finding Rastafari and finding in 1984 the raw foods for reversing cancer, finding it was probably 1992, 93, 92 that I did the psilocybe and the MDMA and was going to Sasha Shulgin's home in San Francisco foothills. I was born in San Francisco. I was living in Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz is my cup of tea to the max. I like the nature here of Minnesota. I like the cost of living. I don't like the pollution. I don't want to be in a big city anymore. I like living in a smaller area. I'm looking for sustainable. I'm looking to do retreats with women and show them how to turn on their medical intuitive and why the path that I chose, I believe, is a good path, and it's a sustainable path for us, and it's a very different path than the allopathic doctor. That's a path. There's a naturopath, right? An allopath. I don't subscribe to either one of those. I am original medicine, as my grandmother taught, as I hear from the ancestors. Our hands, our energy, our coherent heart field, this coherent heart field, are the basis for what I really engage in with people. So hands-on or remotely, I believe that opening up some of these upper gears, glands, they're called glands in the English language, has greatly helped me with being more empathic, with being more sighted, okay? So it is because of developing it, just like if you go to the gym and you're developing your muscles all the time, like right now I'm developing my hair and I'm getting my ether back. See, I think I've shown you before, and we've got a super cold snap today, but getting the spiral in the hair, and the deeper the spiral or the nap or the curl, whatever you want to call it, this is just, wet in the I was in the shower and it got wet, and I just pulled them back a little bit because I'm regenerating. What I'd like to do is go freeform locks. This will be the 4th time. And I gave up my locks, my dreadlocks, because I was in a place of mourning. When we cut our hair, just like the Samson and Delilah story that's in the Bible, right? That story, if you read through it, like my grandmother taught me, a lot of our prophecy from great mother times, like Merlin Stone and Riane Eisler wrote about, is in the Bible, but you've got to sift through to find it. So yes, this is a strength. And when we're in mourning, we're in stress, we're great stress, in despair, like the stress I was under, I chose to cut them. I took one and took it to my big fire pit in the front, and I put it in there, and I called upon the ancestors for help. I made a donation. So I said, I'm willing to do this, and I'm willing to rebuild my strength, and that's what I'm going to do. So if you look at my hair, and it looks different than on my website, we haven't updated the pictures on it yet. Got my bike over there that I bought for $90. See if you can see it. And I've been riding my bike several times and getting to the gym and getting back in the sauna and sleeping at night. And what I do, how I support myself on a plantation that requires the dollar, the paper, is I help other people to regenerate themselves. And sometimes they might ask me about psilocybe, or they might ask me about Molly or MDMA or ecstasy, whatever you want to call it. They might ask me, and they appreciate coming to a medicine woman who's a shaman who's a medicine woman, who can say, I've had some of those experiences. I'm not a know-it-all, but I've had experiences with being diagnosed with ovarian cancer, with using psilocybe, with using Molly, MDMA. I've had experiences with extensive use of cannabis. I don't use these anymore. If I got myself to land and I was around a group of trusted people, I had a trusted source, and I was in a very safe space, I probably would definitely use psilocybe again. But as I'm in my day-to-day life and I still have some concerns about a family member, I'm not going to alter, myself right now, because it's not a good choice. Just like, if you had a brand new baby right now, you wouldn't be getting high or checking out. You would be really connecting with life and on a different basis, okay? So psilocybe is useful for empathy, for opening your far eye. Some people call it a third eye. I call it a far eye. And I call it a far eye because I've written people that I'm connected with on Facebook who I've never met in person, and I'll be laying asleep. I've got one from Naomi Malope on my naturallywithkaren.com website under testimonials. And she is a Sangoma, which in Africa is very similar, like my beloved Credo Mutwa, Baba Credo Mutwa. She's a younger woman than myself, and she's on the path to being a Sangoma. And as I was laying there, I couldn't sleep, and I just kept getting like a weird feeling. And I realized that, much like my own clients, if I knew I had, like today, I've got 2 more people on my calendar, one that I'm going to meet at my shop and one that I'm going to meet through the screen at 8 o'clock my time. I'm thinking about them. I'm preparing. I was doing some study last night for my 8 o'clock client tonight. I'm going to help her immensely. I have an absolute clarity now that she's done her hair tissue testing as to exactly why she's having the symptoms that she is. And I've already thought through, because of 35 years as an adult being a medicine woman, not just alkaline foods, not just fasting. If you want to work with Dr. Sebi's electric diet, I can help you. You want to go all raw, I can help you. You want to do a lot of fasting or intermittent fasting, I can help you. I've done them. Okay? I've done the vegan diet. I've been a vegetarian for many years in the 80s. I've been someone who mistakenly used a lot of soy. My partner, before my son's partner, was from Kingston, Jamaica. He has dreads to the floor, and he was vegan at that point for over 40 years, and an amazing cannabis grower, amazing guy. And he worked at a place where he made soy milk at Wildwood. He made tofu and soy, and so our fridge was packed with soy. And I didn't realize I wasn't doing hair testing at that point. I was just wanting to be a vegetarian. And we were eating lots of tofu stir fries and lots of fresh, delicious, creamy, thick soy milk that he'd made fresh. And I wanted to honor his work with his hands and his heart. But I didn't realize that since I had so much mercury in my mouth, which is why, sometimes I don't even want to smile for my pictures, because when I was 12, my teeth were drilled so extensively. I didn't realize that between the mercury and the soy and all the estrogen and all the copper, that I had really done a number to my uterus. And that was part of the basis for why I had the ovarian cancer diagnosis. You might not know that there's a toxic load dumped into you vis-a-vis your mamas, your grandmas, your great-grandmas, right? Your Oma, right? You might call her your Oma, but in the Western allopathic world, the Oma is a cancer. I am very passionate. I was extremely militant. I used to wear, and I still have, vegan combat boots. I used to wear with long dresses, and I had very long, beautiful hair. I've had dreadlocks. I've had braids for 25, 30 years. I was always backstage at reggae shows, and I'm a drummer. I'm a dancer. I'm a shaman. I'm an earth woman. And now myself, Pablo's grandma, Fire and Luna's mama, Zawa's mama. I'm a mama to many, right? My son's name is Zawa. And through learning through some very, very harsh experiences that this plantation will throw at you, I'm no longer a pushover. So I'm not Lumineers and blonde hair dye and posing for you and talking about Beyonce and Jay-Z and telling you that I love Disney and Oil of Olay and buying a new MK handbag and painting my fingernails, because these are my solar panels. I'm not going to go to the store and buy vitamin D because I know better, okay? And I'm never too arrogant to say that I'm not going to learn from you and from many other people, but I'm way past the system. My grandparents were past the system. We don't do religion and politics. I haven't had to tell a lie, as Peter Tosh says. For 35 years, I've never owned a microwave or allowed it in my house. I don't do video games, computer games. I don't do it. I want to build with other people who are open-minded. So if you're listening to this and it feels shocking, it feels too new for you, go back, think it through, and listen from your heart, okay? Don't listen from just your brain. Listen from your heart. That every time you turn on a predictable song on your radio, it's producing emotions based on familiar patterns and experiences you've had, and that almost everyone has had. It's predictable programming. And those emotions are producing, they're producing feelings. And those feelings are swaying the entire world into ordered, predictable thinking. Okay? So creating a resource-driven world is different than creating structures like Alasha talks about, like creating medicine like I talk about. I know it works. I've seen it. I've experienced it. Yes, I cannot come on board and work for you for free. I have house payments to make, and I'm trapped in Babylon too that takes money. I often trade people. I need a promoter to set me up with retreats. I would love to do psilocybe circles. You've seen me talk about that if you've been on my page for a while. I love to do readings and teach people how to do readings. I can pull out 3 cards. These are archetypes. They're archetypes that give you information. For some people like to express it from your higher self. It's not about channeling. I used to use that word a long time ago. Let's leave that for the television, the tele-lie. I don't channel, okay? What I do is I'm in touch with myself enough through the use of psilocybe, the use of MDMA, the one time, through cannabis, through stepping my feet on the earth, through getting in touch with real rhythm and heartbeat, through learning from ancients and wise elders, from hundreds of books and courses, hundreds or thousands of hours per year with real people in my space, that these experiences with psilocybe and MDMA have been a part. They would definitely be something I would mention. I'm an open book about most things, unless it comes to, my being a mother and my child, and then it's none of anybody's business. I love my child dearly, and I'm aware of the assault that goes on a regular basis in our world. So anyway, big up, build an Earth Day to live. Oh yeah. So when I was at West Valley College, I learned about earth ships. I learned about Arcosante through DJ Serralo. That was got my AA degree in 1989 and my paralegal certificate in family law in 1988. It's one of the first years. So it had to be 1986. 84, I got into raw foods for reversing cancer, the Hippocrates way. So around 1985, 86, I got into learning about earth ships. And I really did a lot of requesting, asking other sisters, hey, why don't we build a community? And people were like, I want my own space. I don't really see it. And I kept having dream and vision and seeing the future, right? And realizing we needed to help these dogs that were being just pulled around by the neck or treated as people's, things. They have pet mentality and owner mentality. I don't own other beings. It's not a part of my reality. It's not my choice to, inject them with all these things. Now, dogs have autism, right? So anyway, bless up, Brother Scott. Good to see you. And Sister Felicia. Yes. And Michaela. Good to see you. And who else? Michael. Good to see you. And Mickey King, it looks like. Excuse my squinting. I could have put my reading glasses on. But I am rebuilding. I am detoxing through stress hormones and stuff like that. I gained some weight. It was a hell of a year. And I'm gonna ask you to go over to my YouTube channel at Naturally with Karen and help support me, because together, it's always been my statement since the 1980s, together we rise. All right. So you guys have a beautiful day. If you think of any questions, feel free to note them. I'm a big supporter of psilocybe. I'm a big supporter of helping our children get out of these institutions. Even the new McDonald's that was built here in the city that I live in of 11,000 people, it looks like a prison. The new middle school looks like a prison. You go into the hospitals and they're creating wings with behavioral health issues and medicalized birth and all the medications that you're on. This is your scanner. This is how we heal. You can cite up many things, but the language is a land gauge, and I can go into a lot more on that. Anyway, have a great day.